Hi everyone, welcome to eLearnChat, where talk is knowledge. I'm Rick Zanotti. We are here today with Leslie Price, coming to us from just on the other side of the pond. She's with learnappeal.org.uk. In studio, Harold Mugliati is our video producer. Our guest today, it is the one, the only, Kevin Siegel from IconLogic. Here we go.
This show is sponsored by Relay Corporation. Digital learning development, media development, corporate video, management consulting, and more. Visit us at www.relate.com. Thanks.
And we are back in that center position of absolute power. It's Kevin Siegel. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing awesome. You all?
We're doing great.
Yeah.
Flu and coffee?
Yep. We are.
Apart from the weather, it's we've got a storm that's crossing the UK at the moment, so there's an awful lot of flooding.
Really?
No storms out here.
I've got the big winter jumper on.
That's right. You guys are starting to get winterish. We're in California. Yeah. There's no storm. It's just blue. It's okay. No complaints.
Wildfires.
We have wildfires. Boy, do we have wildfires.
Yeah, you have no problems except some fires.
That's like the third.
I'm near Cincinnati. I have nothing to complain about. It's gorgeous out.
Yep.
So
I like Cincinnati. It's a great city. Yeah, I like Cincinnati. It's a nice city. Anyway, Kevin, you've been up to something lately, all sorts of things, and we were talking a little bit pre-show about levels of e-learning and all sorts of things like that. There's a lot of confusion when it comes to that. Everybody's got different ways to define it, and I think it winds up becoming one of those nickel and dime things with clients. You don't want to nickel and dime a client. Well, I'm sorry, but that's a level 2 interaction. We didn't bid for that, or level 3. And the clients go, huh? What are you talking about? What do you think the levels are? What's going on as far as levels?
So I wish there were standards. Like when you go talk about the web, there's standards, and you can base what you do on web standards, and that's awesome. So we got involved in a project, and the client said we're going to want level 3 e-learning, and my immediate response is we can do it with an asterisk, because to me, and I think for most people listening right now, there are 3 levels of e-learning, and to me, level 1 e-learning, let's make sure we get the definitions right, would be something that you go to YouTube and you watch a video. And you can learn, I mean, look, you think about YouTube, it's the biggest repository of e-learning content in the world.
Yep.
With all those videos. You watch a video and the interactivity is rewind, pause, mute, rewind, fast forward, scrubbing the playhead back and forth. That's it. If you go to lynda.com, and I would say lynda.com goes far further than what YouTube does. If you post videos on YouTube, they're just videos. What lynda.com does is they add some highly polished post-production to their videos. They do everything as far as I know. They could have changed it now, but my understanding is they do all of their videos in Camtasia. And what they add to it is they've got the instructor teaching you the concepts while you watch their screen, and then they tell you, okay, pause the video and now go do these activities. And it's effective. You can't knock lynda.com. They're the biggest as far as e-learning repositories. So the biggest repository of videos would be YouTube. lynda.com would be the best of the videos. And I would say that that's all level 1. Do you agree? Both of you that those are level 1 e-learning?
Yep.
Okay. So level 2 e-learning now, you start to introduce a fair amount of interactivity, and at a minimum. And some people could say that level 1 e-learning includes an interactive quiz. But if there's going to be a quiz, whether or not the quiz is scored on a learning management system, if there's a quiz, you're talking, there's interactivity. It cannot be a video that you publish. You have to publish it with an HTML5 wrapper these days, not Flash anymore, but
Right.
HTML5. So level 2 at a minimum includes a quiz, but I wouldn't include that as level 2. I would say when you hit level 2, you're talking about a significant amount of branching scenarios. So I think about a project like the zoo. You're doing e-learning about the zoo. And so the first thing you see is the entrance to the zoo. You go through the entrance, and now you're being prompted, all right, where do you want to go in the zoo? Do you want to see the big cats? Do you want to see the reptiles? What do you want to see? And depending on what you click, it's a different experience all in one course. But the learner can decide where they want to go. And certainly those branches can cross, and you can come back again. There'll be a home tab. That's a fair amount of interactivity along with the quiz. I would say that's level 2.
And I would say that's level 3. The reason being, look at how much e-learning is really page turning with a teeny weeny bit of interactivity, or you click something to reveal something, but there's not a lot of branching. And there's a ton of courses.
I would agree with you, Rick. And
yeah.
In that instance,
I don't know. I'm with Kevin. I'm with Kevin. I think just putting in branching scenarios where the learner can choose, that's level 2. You're not actually testing any knowledge whatsoever. Oh, I think I'll go down this path, and then what'll I see? Oh, I don't like that. I'll go somewhere else. Right, bye.
Well, okay, but I don't disagree that could be a level 2. But what happens to the standard page turner, where you have
that's level 1.
So that's still part of level 1. So we'll include that with the videos. They're a little better than a video, maybe, but not always. Okay.
So if you think about
I'm with you there,
level 1
then.
and level 2,
Yep.
Adobe Presenter, Articulate Presenter,
They're all level 1.
iSpring Suite.
Yeah.
Those are PowerPoint plugins.
Yeah.
And so you can take your PowerPoint presentation and add forward and back buttons to it. Now that's level 1. You can also add
again, you could take
to it. You're starting to maybe get into a little bit of level 2.
Right.
And then you can add learner interactions where the learner is spinning a wheel and doing things. Not gamification, not a game, but engagement features. That could be getting to a level 2. So
okay, I'll agree with you.
Significantly more complicated to go from level 1 to level 2. But here's where we get into trouble.
Okay, but I agree with you then. That
maybe people going to comment on this thing. Let's hear some comments. Level 3. Level 3, if you look at like the Chapman website, which I will post, Bryan Chapman, real well-respected e-learning presence. If you look at Articulate has listed level 1, level 2, level 3, and several others. Level 3 e-learning would be significant amount of learner interactivity. Really high-end graphics. They say, in quotes, award-winning graphics, which is very subjective. What does that mean, award-winning graphics? But I'm talking about, if I think Articulate Storyline, I think a significant number of dials, sliders, with context. It means something. Otherwise, all you're doing is dragging things left and right. So you would hope that if you're doing that kind of interactivity with the dials and the sliders, it really has some context for the learner. For me, that's really important. But here's where level 3 gets incredibly frustrating. Websites that list level 3 say that it could include gamification. So now you have to define, well, what does that mean, gamification? And I attended a conference at some point when you could still go on site and attend conferences, and it was e-learning as a game. And so I said, all right, so you put this 3D goggles on, and you were in a world, a virtual world, and the concept of the game was project management, which, how boring is that? But in playing the game, I was Christopher Columbus. And my job was to be a project manager to get my ships, get my funding, get my crew. Now, look, I had 3 minutes to play this game. I wasn't going to become a project manager, and I'm not a project manager, really not a classically trained project manager. So I got the game, went into the nearest pub, said, you, I'm going on a trip. You want to come with me? They said yes, and the whole crew came with me. It was awesome. So that kind of a game, you can pick up things, you have inventory, things go to other things. We got on the ship, and 30 seconds out to sea, I was dead. So the screen turned red. And I said, what? And they said, you don't know who you hired. You didn't do your Myers-Briggs.
Yep.
Your crew was nothing but a bunch of cutthroats and murderers. So the minute they got on that boat, they killed you. You should have done your Myers-Briggs. And I go, well, I guess I would have known I had to do that if I'd played the game. But you see my point.
Yeah.
To make that game, I asked that guy, how much did it cost to build this game? Because it is awesome. It is the top of the mark e-learning, right? Mm-hmm. It's like playing Wii or PlayStation and learning. And he said several $1 million to create that game. So they were lumping in that as level 3 e-learning. And I'm like, there's no way you can do that. I think all three of us would agree that kind of a game, that kind of a virtual world is beyond what we can do with time, effort, and our technology. I mean,
and budget.
Have illustrators drawing each and every little scene.
Yeah, and budget. Right? Yeah, we're going to get the budget for that. You know, it's funny you bring that up.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to interrupt you. I'm afraid I was doing this back in the late 2000s with students in further education in the UK. So I was doing where we were creating e-learning and not spending oodles and boodles and cadoodles of money because we were working in community education and we were getting students to make really difficult choices using, believe it or not, Lotus Learning Space.
Okay, so Leslie, today, given our technology today, if you were hired to do an e-learning gig, because part of what we do is we do training, we do books, and we do e-learning development. And the first thing the client wants to know is, what is it going to cost me for this? And they throw out, I want level 3 e-learning. And level 3 e-learning, how do you budget that if it's going to include the gamification that we're seeing, where you're actually building out a virtual world? So you said you were doing that years ago. Okay, awesome. But how much time did it take you to do a fully immersive virtual world and have it look the way people expect it to look today?
You are making an assumption, and to make an assumption makes an ass out of you and me. You're making the assumption that it has to be fully immersive. And honestly, it doesn't. What it's got to do is tell a story that people are interested in. And if you look at the way that people read books, people still read books. People still watch television. They do all these things and try to work out, look at all the Agatha Christie novels. People are still watching them and they're telling a story, and people are still, look at the game Monopoly, and people are still loving playing Monopoly. You don't have to make everything immersive gamification.
Well, no, but remember,
you can make it interesting, you can make it fun.
Yeah, but
it doesn't have to be
I'll disagree with you there.
Millions of pounds on gamification.
Leslie, I'll disagree with you there because clients want what clients want.
That's exactly right.
And 20 years from then, because we were doing immersive training in the 90s, and again, it was simple, it was nice, we had great graphics, but it wasn't the level of quality, it wasn't 3D or virtual like people are wanting now. Now, mind you, once you start telling people what it costs, they back off pretty quickly because it is a lot more expensive to do the virtual reality, the augmented reality, the level of graphics that you require at all moments, and the level of video too, because you're not just talking graphics. Many times we're talking video. The video isn't that expensive to shoot, but then when you start making it into part of 3D worlds, it gets a little more expensive. So yeah, you need a story.
It?
But also remember another thing.
Who is wanting it?
Well, let's talk about
the client or is it the learner?
Well, they don't care about the
Well,
learners.
Leslie,
The clients
learner
care
doesn't
about
know
what
what the
is
learner wants. I
a
think
different
as
question.
e-learning professionals, we're being told,
what to do.
I want you to develop e-learning. I want it to be level 3 e-learning, and then it becomes sort of like this vague thing. Now, wait a minute. Level 3 e-learning could mean, Leslie, I agree with you about telling a story and making it engaging and making it relevant and offering context for the learner. Absolutely, the instructional designer, we will handle that from an instructional design standpoint. But what I'm saying is, the client says they want level 3 e-learning, and all they base what they see as level 3 learning on is those websites that are going to be included in the chat. And those websites are incredibly vague. How do you budget for that? Because the budget for me to create level 3 e-learning, as I see it in Storyline, with dials and sliders, which is awesome. Those are awesome engagement tactics to tell that story, versus build out Christopher Columbus sailing the ocean blue, and all those graphics and all those scenario with worlds would take thousands of man hours or person hours, not man hours, person hours, would take thousands of person hours. And could you even afford it when you try? You're going to win these contracts and it's going to be a fixed fee. And let's say the fixed fee is $50,000 to do this. And they say, well, I meant level 3 e-learning was Christopher Columbus, not dials and sliders and Storyline. You're like, holy moly, how do you resolve that? So what I suggest the levels
you
of
point them
complexity
back
for
into the
level 3
direction of the organizations that are winning awards. And they're winning awards in the Guild, they're winning Learning Technology Awards, and that is not necessarily what is winning awards. What is winning awards is what makes good learning.
Yeah, but I don't think a lot of people care about the awards other than the vendors marketing that award. The clients want what they want. I mean, we go out and when we deal with clients, our job is to try to convince them of what's rational and what's in their budget versus what they want. Half the time they'll tell you, I want it to look like some really advanced. I want it to look like Alien. Well, the Alien costs what, $50 million, $100 million to make, and they go, yeah, but I want it to look like that. And you
Rick,
go,
that's my point. That's my point. So they'll show you a screenshot of whatever you do, whatever story you tell.
Yeah.
It better look like this kind of quality.
Yeah, and they want 3D graphics and 3D graphics. Everything
is 100 person hours, right?
Yeah,
so
or more.
I'm like, goodness gracious. So that was my point. That when they showed me, I want level 3 e-learning, and they showed me a link to a website, and the website was really what it was a PowerPoint presentation with no context. You really didn't know what that facilitator was even backfilling. These were the slide decks that you saw on screen. So a bulleted list of elements. So I'm like, so what does that mean? And it says, could take anywhere between 400 and something hours to do this gig, or it could be thousands of hours. Right. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, which one did you want? Because the hundreds of hours is Storyline. The thousands of hours, that's building Christopher Columbus sailing the ocean blue. Yeah. So that's what I was getting at. And you can see right now on screen that level 3 e-learning, and what does it mean? And here's the word. You see the word there, right? Go on back that screen, would you please? It said possibly simulation, serious game-based, use of avatars, custom interactions, award-winning caliber. What does that mean?
Yeah. It means expensive.
And it does say underneath that, this is a broad-based category. You're going to need to agree what it means. But we've got clients that don't read the very important note underneath that. And they say, we want this level 3, which means we want avatars. So
and when they say avatars, and Kevin, when they say avatars, there's this other issue. People are now used to seeing avatars that have been motion captured. They put a mocap suit on, and then they're captured, and they want that as their avatar. They're not talking about just a picture avatar which just points and does things. We've talked to people, and they go, well, we want it motion captured, and we want this kind of person. They have to have a perfect physique. They have to be muscular. The woman has to look this way. They're talking about talent management. You've got to recruit actors, central casting time, or even real actors. And it gets insane what people want. Now, many times they'll say, budget, no, we can't do that. Sorry, we thought we could. And then when you explain the costs, all of a sudden they'll back down. Some won't. And some actually want it that way. I'll give you an example of what happened at Hilton Hotels about 20-something years ago, 25 years ago almost, 23. They hired the staff of Star Trek, William Shatner, Nimoy, and the others, all as part of this reservation system that they were going to roll out. So they did it. They paid about $1 million for that e-learning, $1 million. 6 months later, when it was done, right? Well, 6 months later, when it was done, it was out of date. Yeah. And Hilton got so ticked off that they stopped doing e-learning for many years because they felt that was a waste of money. And that was really a false expectation. So the company that did that's out of business now. I think they were called IEC, Internal External Communications. They did some enormous pieces that were really nice. They did expensive. I think everything was $2 to $3 million usually. But you know what? They were the best in the field back in the 90s and mid 90s. Everybody wanted to be like them, but they went out of business. And you go, what happened?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid my background is actually in marketing. Mm-hmm. So I have a degree in marketing. And one of the key things that you're taught in marketing is realistic expectations. And that is about whether you're on the client side or whether you're on the seller side. One of the things you have to do, one of the key things you have to do is create realistic expectations. And what you two are talking about is totally unrealistic expectations, which is going to change every 5 minutes the next time Nintendo or TikTok or whoever releases something else. And that just is not about learning.
It isn't about learning. It's about a company wanting to do something.
I agree with you, Leslie. Set expectations from the client side. But as developers, and there's going to be a bunch of e-learning developers watching this presentation, they're going to be asked to bid on a project, whether they're a small shop or a big shop. And the issue they're running into is who is defining level 1, level 2, level 3, and should there be a level 4 or a level 5 e-learning? And level 4, level 5, Rick, that gets into the thing you were talking about with getting someone wearing a suit, and they have to be mapped to all of these avatar things, and it's going to cost millions of dollars, which I'm not talking about, Leslie, the goal of the learning. I'm not talking about that. I can agree with you 100% that context, expectations, tell stories, all of that. But what do you do to implement once you've agreed we're going to tell this story? And you can tell a story in level 1 e-learning. You can tell a story in level 10 e-learning, but as you look at it right now, there are not 10 levels of e-learning. There's only 3. And those 3 categories, what I'm getting at, are not covering what can be done today if you have the deep pockets to go to the highest levels. That highest level would be that virtual world scenario. What it looks like, whether it's Leonard Nimoy, doing their thing and it gets outdated, or whether it's Christopher Columbus sailing the ocean blue, which would not get outdated other than the graphics can look cheesy a couple of years from now. That's what I'm talking about. So how do you budget for that?
Okay, I accept that. But to me, possibly because I'm also a teacher, so I was a lecturer, I was a teacher in what you would call, grad school, whatever, we call it university. And it's all about expectations. And if you are not able to, if people are expecting too much, so you could do all this fantastic level 3 learning, level 3 e-learning, and it's a whole load of bleep, bleep, bleep. And, there's various words in there, both beginning, I won't say what they're both beginning and ending with, but let's just say they mean rubbish.
Okay, but with good instructional design, it's not going to be just beep, beep, beep. That's not what I'm talking about. Let's just say it's got awesome instructional design, and again, it's relevant and it's telling a story. Is it level 1? Is it level 2? Is it level 3? That's the amount of beep beeps you get as you move up. And what I have found as we work with clients is that the descriptions of level 2 and specifically level 3 are completely inconsistent from request to request. And what I'm getting at is, should there be more than 3 levels, and should it be documented in a consistent way so that I know you wanted level 10 e-learning? That's a minimum of $20 million to create 1 minute of content. I made that number up, of course. So I'm not talking about, is it relevant at this point? Yes, I agree. Make relevant content that isn't just sizzle. I want steak.
I know, but you could also spend $20 million on creating absolute rubbish at level 1.
It happens all the
And
time.
that's what I'm saying.
Sure.
That's what I'm
You would hope
saying.
that we're not going to create rubbish.
I don't
Leslie,
necessarily
we're hoping you're not going to make
agree
rubbish. You got to
with
$20 million, don't make
where
rubbish.
you're coming from.
But
okay, I think the real premise.
$20 million in effort.
No, I think the premise.
That's what we need to find out.
Yeah, I think the premise we're talking about now is, how do you define the levels? Because you're right. I think we're definitely past level 3 when we're talking about some of the stuff people want. They may not necessarily get, or they may not even realize, because there's also the issue of most people don't consider budget until they're hit in the face with it, and then they go, "Oh, I know you want an Oscar-winning movie, but that movie costs $150 million to make." Oh, and then they stop.
Or the prime, Rick. The prime gets a contract, and then comes to someone to implement the work, and says, I'm making this number up. We told the client $60,000 to create 1 hour of content, and it better be level 3, or the client's going to be angry. And immediately I go, that is terrifying that you just said that, because what does that mean, level 3? Does that mean you got to build a virtual world, or does that mean dials, sliders, incredible branching scenarios, and can you define that? No, the client said level 3. And you better make it level 3, or they're going to bust your chops and not going to pay the bill as you create it. And I'm like, how do I move forward with that?
Right.
Without
and again,
defensive.
that's where that level of expectation is set. They've got to define, and that's the only way you can do a project like that and succeed is when it's really well defined.
So the prime, any prime wins a contract. And they said, we're going to deliver you level 3 e-learning. And I went to this website, and this was the definition, and that's what we based our bid on. Yeah. And I said, did you read the important note at the bottom where it says, this is incredibly vague? And you just hit in the middle of your $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 for 1 hour development. This is actually going to cost you $1 million.
Yeah.
If the client is expecting that because you didn't set your expectations, yet the prime has already moved forward, and now there's a lot of ill will and people are upset. So where did they go to learn what level 3 was? They Googled level 3. They hit that PowerPoint presentation, and that's what they used. They didn't use the important note at the bottom of the screen.
No.
And we, as developers that are not the primes, we're just fulfilling this. We're left now picking up the pieces of this mess.
Yeah. You need to work with us, Kevin. We won't get you into that situation, but that's another story.
So, and also,
we've been there, done that. We've worked with a lot of large
many
clients.
Times, how much should it cost to develop e-learning?
Yeah.
And I actually have a tool, a calculator we created. It's absolutely free. You go to the IconLogic website, and that's it right there. Thank you. And it was actually, interestingly enough, created in an e-learning development tool. So really simple to create something like this. It is, in fact, a built-in branching scenario. And if you click the begin button real quick, we won't go deep into it, but if you click the begin button, what you do is you type how many minutes of content you're planning on creating. And yes, Leslie, I hear you. Whatever you create has got to have context. It's got to tell stories. It's got to be relevant, all of that. But that's the instructional design part of that you make a relevant lesson. So if you say you want 1 minute of content, the next thing it'll ask you is, what tool are you looking to use? And it goes from there. So it's a complete branching scenario, right? And do you have your storyboards? Do you have your scripts? All of this stuff. And what I am finding to do what I consider level 2.5 e-learning. You could say level 3 e-learning is the end of it, but I really think we're getting into level 4, level 5, which is not defined, which is what's so frustrating.
Right. It's
so
all lumped together as
level 2.5, level 3 e-learning based on how we create it. I'm telling people they should budget approximately 4 person hours to develop 1 minute of content. What do you think?
For level 3?
Level 2.5.
For level 2.5.
Because level 3 is so vague.
Yeah, so 4. So
No
that's about right. I'd say that's about right. So you're talking about 200 something hours.
I know ways it can be done for a hell of a lot less. But hey ho, who am I?
Well, no, remember, you were doing it internally with budgets and everything else. We're talking as vendors. It's a little bit of a different world because you may only go in as a vendor one time. They may call you in for 10 years. They may call you in for 1 gig, and that's it. It just depends on what the needs are. And there's a little more cost involved in that because you're not employees. There's no other. You're being brought in for expertise. And so as a result, there is a little extra cost in all of that. And there's also changes. There's also, for example, when we work with groups that are maybe more marketing, sales oriented, you're going to have a lot more changes. That's just the nature of the beast. Yep. If you work with a technical group, they pretty much know what they want and they'll stick to that because that's what they want. If you're working with maybe customer service, things could evolve a little bit. Maybe not as much, but it could evolve. And it just really depends on the client, what they do, how they want it, and what their experience is. And to a certain point, we've got generational clients. Younger, maybe different from middle age, maybe different from older. The requirements will be different. And so you're going to run into that, what do I do? What do they want? And people don't really define very well what they want until they see it more often than not. Which is why storyboards are tough too, because they can look at it on a storyboard, they go, yeah, this is perfect. And then they see it in real life when you finish and they go, oh, well, I thought it was going to have this. No, it wasn't in the storyboard.
Yeah, we get that all the time. You get to those storyboards because we make the client sign off on the voiceover script, the storyboard, the visuals, and then when you see it all together, it is we budget for that. The client says, now that I see it with the voiceover and I see the visuals, I think we need a little bit more.
Right.
We always budget for clients
same
need
here.
a couple more icons or visuals or something like that.
Yeah,
so I
that's
can also
happen.
tell you from our experience, and I'll see if you agree with this as well, Rick and Leslie, to develop level 1 e-learning, the kind of e-learning you would do in Camtasia, whether or not it includes the quiz, because remember, I think putting a quiz in there could be upper level 1. I mean, there's nothing sophisticated about putting a quiz in anymore. What we're seeing is 1 to 2 hours for every minute of development, which means there's no draggable things. There's no drag and drop. There's no sliders. There's no dials. There's certainly no virtual world.
Yeah,
I'm saying 1 to 2 hours.
And it could be more depending on the type of video you're doing, because sometimes videos can get pretty expensive depending on how much you have to shoot, if you need actors or other people.
I'm glad you said that, Rick. So when I say video, so let's be clear about that, right? When I say video, I am not talking about something that needs a video crew, a film crew.
Got it.
I'm not talking about that.
Okay.
I'm talking about soft skills learning, which was done maybe originally in PowerPoint, and you take those graphics into Camtasia, and you add some annotations to it, you add some music to it, you add a quiz to it. That's level 1. You might get level 1.5. If I'm going to put the dots in there for the levels, which I think you should do, 1.5 puts a quiz in, right? So I think 1 to 2 hours to produce that kind of thing. And I think people need to know these numbers because, okay, you're not doing a $10 million gig that you won with the federal government. You're an internal employee. And the boss says, I want this done, and here's what I want in it. And you're on your own. It's just you. And you better have it done next week. And they asked for 5 hours of content. You're like, 5 hours of content? It's going to be an hour or 2 per minute.
Yeah.
And let me do 5 times 60. That's the number of minutes times this. Boss, we call it horses in the barn. I don't have enough horses in the barn. Even if I slept here, I don't have enough resources to get it done. So people need to know, I think reasonable, what level of e-learning are we talking about? Level 1, level 2, level 3. And when we start talking about the e-learning levels, okay, how much content per minute? How many minutes do you want? And then I can do a budget on that. So that calculator we created does that. And I sent you another link just so that's not all about IconLogic, right? There's another calculator out there, another website that I found was really good and accurate. Use that one if you don't want to come to the IconLogic site. But both of those calculators are free.
Yep.
So what I really love is somebody help define what it means, level 1, level 2, level 3, and maybe some consensus on what it's going to take to do all those levels.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, we probably need a couple more levels depending on what people think they want.
I think so. I think there's probably 5 levels of e-learning. If you put that virtual world, as I described it, as top of the mark, would we agree that that kind of thing is be the top of the mark, where you are in a world, it's immersive, whether or not it's virtual reality, you're wearing the goggles maybe? Because look, tools like Captivate can do 360-degree learning with some limited interactivity. Yeah. I wouldn't say that that's the Christopher Columbus game as I described it earlier, but certainly, look, I was hired by an airline to do virtual reality e-learning to teach flight attendants about where everything is in the plane, certain models. And so all we had to do was go in and take some 360 photos and drop those photos into Captivate, for crying out of the box, and put some interactivity in it. And they were saying, oh, this is level 3 e-learning. And I'm like, no, actually, no. It's virtual reality, but I still think that's level 2 e-learning. There was nothing complicated, difficult, expensive about any of that. And you can get 360 cameras for $150. There's nothing to them. That's not doing, Rick, what you were describing earlier, getting that suit with those lights on it, and you are a virtual avatar, you know, that's engaged, even green screen video.
Yeah,
that's more complicated than what I'm talking about to get that pulled off.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Well, guess what, Kevin? We are pretty much out of time. This is a good topic because this affects a lot of us, especially as vendors. It really affects us, but also as clients. Yeah. The clients don't know what's out there more often than not. Some do, but a lot have no clue. They just say, "I saw a movie and I want that." Well, yeah, but
or I saw a website link and I want that.
Yeah, yeah, and they don't know how much some of this stuff costs. And again, you can do things internally, but usually what we do, I'll give you an example. Many times what we'll
I'm
do... I'm
going to have to shoot off, I'm afraid, guys.
Yep, we're about to
I'll see you next time. Lovely to chat to you. But I've got kitty cats meowing here, wanting their dinner. Okay, take care. Bye.
Right, bye. So anyway, Kevin, so a lot of stuff, when you're talking with clients who don't really have an idea what anything costs. For example, we live not far from Hollywood. We're like 50 miles from Hollywood, or actually about 40 miles from Hollywood. And when you start looking at budgets for Hollywood productions, people, their mouths just drop open, their eyes like, it's expensive. And these are things that are outlined ahead of time. And cost overruns happen, and you've got crews are not cheap. And it all adds up. And then you've got editing.
I had a university contact me and said, we want to take all of our courses, our entire catalog, and make it e-learning. And I said, well, how much content are we talking about? How many hours?
Now we're still
maybe not all of it.
Yeah,
we're
still live, by the way.
Hours of content.
Yeah, right? We're still live. She took,
did you say 26 minutes or 26 hours? What? I want to make sure I heard you right. They said 26 hours. You heard us right. So I budgeted out. It was going to be in the millions.
Yep.
Now, wouldn't I have loved that gig? I was super excited, but I told everybody, let's not get excited because there's no way that they have budget for this. So of course I showed them the numbers, and they went, "Oh, that's a little bit more expensive than we thought." So you know what? We're going to modify our request. And they took it down to 8 minutes of content, just like a teaser for their university. That's all they did. Yeah. So I'm like, well, there you have it. 8 minutes down from thousands of minutes of content because of how expensive it is. Yep. And it's never been less expensive to do e-learning than it is today.
Right.
I mean, right, Rick? You can do all of this in a tool with a skeleton crew, right?
Yep.
10 years ago, it would have cost 3 to 4 times what I'm telling you and taken, and it would have been half as interactive, right?
Yep.
And dated, like you described. But nevertheless, people are still stunned. I still didn't know it was going to take that, because it still is human hours to develop this, and you've only got so many hours in a day. So how many developers can you bring in, and what's the budget?
Yep. And the other thing with e-learning, a lot of people don't get is that it is different teams that work on it many times. You've got graphic artists, you've got sound people, you've got video people, you've got
a certain person that needs to write the voiceover script.
Yep.
A certain person needs to create the storyboard. You got another person doing the graphics. You got a project manager on top of that. And the project managers typically are that hidden, nasty charge that could very well be the most expensive charge of them all. And in our experience, the two big expenses are project management, because without that, your project's dead. Instructional design, there's 3 of them, and the writer. So
that's right.
No project manager, no designer, no writer. What do you got? You got a bunch of visuals. As Leslie was saying, it's all sizzle. It's all bing, 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 with nothing.
Yeah,
right?
no, that's true.
Those are the 3 most expensive areas on there. But the client's saying, I don't want to pay that. I want that part for free. You want the instructional design for free. You want no project management. Human beings need to project manage that. So are we writing that off, or are we burying the charges somewhere else?
We had a client, we have a client actually, who recently we did one course for, and there was about 3 months of instructional design work that went on. 3 months. It went on forever. Yeah. And at the end she goes, wait a minute, I thought her time was free.
Design work, thousands of dollars,
Oh,
right?
yeah. And it was funny, when it was said, when all was said and done, the client went, wait a minute, wasn't her time free, the instructional design? I go, no, it's been 3 months.
No, it's not free. Really? It's not free to meet with you. To every time you meet, you got to put that into your budget.
She was just shocked.
These free meetings is not free.
Yeah, she was shocked.
None of it's free.
She thought it was free, and I was going, free? Why would it be? But who worked for free for 3 months?
I got to pay a technical writer to write this stuff. I think they're going to charge me. I have to charge you, because we are a capitalist society.
Yeah.
We gotta pass that charge on and cover overhead, etc. Absolutely.
It's true. It's interesting.
I don't know. Rick, what I hope is people watch this session, and what they do is they say, you know what? When I do my e-learning, I had no idea that there were so many levels involved. I had no idea the levels were so vague.
Right.
Maybe we can start coming up with some more consistent descriptions. I'm trying to come up with better descriptions. Right now, I've still got the level 3, but if we can at least do level 1, 2, 3, and put a 0.5 in the middle there.
Yeah.
Right? So we're not going to get to 4, but level 3.5, would level 3.5 be virtual worlds? I mean, I think it should be, if it's not level 4, and everything that you do in Storyline and Captivate today, I think we can agree, is if level 3.5 is virtual worlds, then you're not doing that in Captivate and Storyline. No. Definitely not doing it in Camtasia. There's no off-the-shelf tool you're doing any of that in. So I think the best you can hope for in the tools from Adobe and Articulate, would you agree, Rick? Level 2.5, level 3, you're not getting to level 3.5. And if level 3 is the top of the mark, then you're not getting there with those tools. Level 2.5.
Right. And then again, if you're going to that level of tool, you're probably looking at game engines. And they're going to be about 25,000 and up. And they'll do a lot of what you want, but they're not cheap. And then you've got to find somebody who can program those game engines. So
that is correct. You need programmers doing the hardcore programming like they do for the games. You can go to any store and download these games. The games that are involved, like any computer game.
Yep.
Right, that you can do on your tablets now as well. Those cost. I think the cheapest video game out there that you can get from the App Store has got to be millions of dollars to create it.
Some of them, yeah.
I wouldn't say that's e-learning. And if you're going to say it's e-learning because it is teaching you something, then what level of e-learning is it? And like I say, if it's level 3, then nothing we're doing in Camtasia or Captivate or Storyline can come anywhere near it. So at the best, can we just agree you're going to get to 2.5 because there is no 2.6789, and you get to level 3, you're talking that budget better be millions of dollars. Do you think that's a reasonable?
At least several hundred. At least you're in the hundreds of thousands, if not million. Yeah, easily. easily,
Yeah, I
depending
can't
on the
imagine
level
any
you
of those
want.
games that are out there today are done for hundreds of thousands. I
Oh
think
no, those
they're
are all millions, 5
You
million,
think?
5 million or more. Some of these are humongously expensive.
Yeah, because
So-
they spend 5 million on them, but they make 200 million. So it makes sense. Yes, invest all day long. But
Yep.
that's not what I consider e-learning, even if it's e-learning through gamification,
Well,
which we could have a whole other session on what it
well,
means to be
and here's-
gamification.
and here's- and
Are you
here's
playing
one
a
of the-
Jeopardy game? Because you can do that in Storyline
Sure.
and Captivate. Or
Yep.
are you Christopher Columbus sailing the ocean blue? And that would be Uber gamification.
Right.
That is that a couple of, and like that guy told me, couple of $1 million to develop that.
Yeah, and one more thing. Things change.
And
So
things change.
if you're
Yes,
spending
yes.
that much money on something that's variable, you're going to keep spending a lot of money or drop it. And that's
Yes.
what usually stops people from going hog wild. Back in the 90s, people were in mid-90s to early 2000s, if even, people were spending millions on e-learning. And the bottom line, the minute there were changes, it was thrown out.
Which is
Lexus.
why e-learning got a bad rap, right?
Lexus spent, I
look
think
what
it
we're
was-
spending, and I'm
I
doing
think
our dated
Lexus-
screen. So
I think
yeah,
I think Lexus
absolutely.
spent 2.5 million or something like that in their Lexus Labs training. Again, that company went out of business that built it, and the Lexus Labs was really cool. And you had to sell your way up from some subterranean cave all the way up to the outside, and you had tons of video. This was done back in those days on, I want to say, 6 DVDs. It may have been more. So you had to have a special DVD.
That's something.
Yeah. And
I'm tracking right with you, but I also would say if Leslie were here, she would jump in and say this: the students that are going through that training are not going to say at the end, "It was really cool training."
right.
They want to get the training. They want to get in and out. It's got to have context
Right.
and be relevant to them.
Yeah.
And I might even submit to you, it better not take a long time to get through it. I don't
That's
have
right.
the time to do
Yeah.
that. You know,
Yeah, this thing-
I had to go and sit through ethics e-learning training.
Yeah.
And it was such a horrible training gig. All you were trying to do was skip through it to get to the quiz, which you knew was coming, to pass the quiz so you can get to the next thing. And wouldn't you say then, Rick, to make me do that, to make me fast forward through the ethics training to get to the quiz is in fact unethical.
Yeah.
So the training made me be unethical to take ethics training because it was unreadable. It was unreadable. If I was the best dude in the world, I'm looking at a screen with a bunch of text and dated images that had nothing to do with the words. So I'm like, I just want to get through this.
Yep.
And the minute I clicked next, I'm being unethical.
Right.
Because you're supposed to be taking ethics training in an ethical way.
Right.
So how do you resolve that? You know?
Yeah. Fun. Anyway, Kevin, we are out of time, and thanks so much for coming on the show. And this is a good topic. I don't think we've even touched all of it yet. There's a lot of stuff there. If you have any comments and you're watching the show, put the comments down below. Start a conversation.
Yeah, light it up. What levels of e-learning are we talking about? Help us out, please.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not the end-all authority. I want to hear what you guys are saying. You know.
Yep, that sounds good. Well, Kevin, we'll talk soon. And if you're watching the show, please let us know what you think and get involved in the conversation because this involves you too. Have a good one, everyone.
All right,
and thanks again, Kevin. Bye-bye.